Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that on the day of judgment, there will be an incident that will occur. On that day, Allah will address the jinn. He will say, "O people of the jinn, you have misled many of mankind." But then a group from mankind will step forward and they will say, "Yes, some of us made use of others and we have now reached the term that you have appointed us." So there is a group from humanity who work alongside them. And this is what seems to be indicated by these whistleblowers, that there is a group of humanity who are aware of these things, maybe in awe of them. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that some of the most advanced military facilities have a lot of symbology related to idolatry.
What do you mean?
I'll give you an example. There seems to be an obsession with the zodiac. So you'll find a lot of the programs, the space programs, and moreover, like the history of these space programs entwined with black magic and people who seem to participate in the occult. And it's well known, by the way. I'm not saying something for people who don't know and haven't done the research. It sounds odd, but in these most advanced and let's say secretive programs, such example is a researcher. Her name is Diana Pasulka. She has highlighted that in her book. It's called American Cosmic. She highlights the link between the occult and the Space Force, and she mentions a man, his name is Jack Parsons. Back in the 1950s, he was doing very bizarre rituals in the desert in order to try and get in contact with non-human intelligence.
One of the most interesting topics that non-Muslims love talking about these days is the UFOs, aliens. And one of the topics that Muslims love discussing, the jinn. Now, in this week's episode, we're bringing both of these worlds together. Is there a link between UFOs and the jinn, aliens and the jinn? This is something we discussed with our brother from Essex, Farouk McDermott, who is a lifelong experiencer. He's had paranormal experiences throughout his life, even before he became Muslim. And he shares his intriguing story with us today, from his experiences as a child, his experiences in North Africa, all the way to the point when he became Muslim, to how his research continued over the years. This is going to be a fascinating episode for all of us, I hope. So without further ado, let's get on with this episode today. The very first thing, bro, I wanted to know, before we even dive into the nuts and bolts of this topic.
Yeah.
You were involved in the Dawah many years ago.
Yeah.
Then you took a step back.
Yeah.
Now, and then you came back to the Dawah many years later.
Yeah.
In this topic, this was the entry point.
Yeah.
Why, after all of these years of stepping back, thinking about it, reflecting upon your role, what you want to do in the Dawah, and not acting for so many years, why? What was it about this topic that brought you back to the front and center, if you like, of the Dawah?
That's such a good question, man. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Jazakallah khair for letting me come on and let me come talk and share some of the things I found out over the years. And it's a very good question. There's a couple of answers to that, and each one is valid as the other, right? I'd say the first and probably the most important reason as to why I chose this topic of Dawah is because a lot of non-Muslims don't know how much we know about the world of the paranormal. And that's what we're talking about in the topic. We call it paranormal or the unknown or the strange, high strange events that have happened and do happen to people around the world and have been happening as far back as you want to go in history, right? So this whole world of information that people have shared, going back centuries, is fascinating. And it's something that draws human beings in and has drawn people in for a very long time. And it also goes towards more existential questions that human beings have asked themselves about the origins of mankind. Where do we come from? What we're doing here? Where we're going? And all of the mysteries that come along with those questions, right? So when I used to participate in the Dawah back in the day, I did start in Speaker's Corner like a lot of people do, right? Yeah. So I started in Speaker's Corner, and the Dawah from that perspective is really combative. So it's you arguing a point and an idea or a thought or a belief against someone else's that's normally contradictory to your own. So it's a very combative, and it did me well in that it helped me learn my religion more. If I didn't have an answer, I'd have to go away, study, and come back. And that's what Dawah was initially for me. That was what Dawah was. Then, as you get longer in the tooth as a Muslim, and you learn more and you study more, you realize that Dawah actually, bleeds into every aspect of your life, how you treat people. Your adab is your mannerisms and your good character plays a huge role in Dawah. So you have to learn more about how to be and how to behave. Generally, I'd say Muslims, in your heart, what's right and wrong, how to behave, right? So those areas of Dawah became a focus for me while I carried on learning about, Islam. But it wasn't until I'd say around 2017 that really highlighted the need for a Dawah in a specific way with regard to the jinn and non-human intelligence, we call it that. Because, you go look at science fiction. If you want to look at movies, mankind loves this stuff. People want to talk about the unknown. Yeah. People love to watch movies about ghosts and spooky stories. People want to learn about if there's another life form on other planets out there and what would they look like. And along comes with a lot of that baggage. In nestled deep within it, there are some nuggets of truth. People do see strange craft flying around at night, whether they're secret technology that belongs to the military industrial complex or otherwise, but people see them, and it has instigated stories, and people have had events happen to them that have become famous for it, especially in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. A lot of people had a lot of stories happen to them. So mankind has always been interested in these things, and it's played a part in shaping entertainment and other things in the West.
Pop culture and all of that.
Pop culture, exactly. But there is a nexus point where those stories and reality kind of meet. And in 2017, when I was blessed enough to be able to spend some time in Medina, some strange information got released by people who are part of a secret program in the American government. And these are whistleblowers, right? Who stepped forward, and some videos were released as well. And I'd always, even when I was young, as a non-Muslim, as a young boy,
we're going to get into those.
I had some reason to be interested in these topics. So as an adult, as a Muslim studying in Jamia, I realized that this was an area that we don't really have much on. We have information about the jinn, but no one had really made a clear link from a scholarly or academic perspective between the two. So that became my interest, especially after these revelations. So if you want, we can talk a bit about what happened.
So just so it's clear for everyone, what you're essentially saying is you took a step back from the Dawah for how many years?
Oh, it was a few years, bro. Like, I was still doing stuff with regard to TV. So I was doing kids programs, and so I was kind of still affiliated with the Dawah to a certain extent up until 2016. And I'd made some TV shows and documentaries, but something happened in my personal life when I was making a movie, and that kind of slowed down.
Got you. Okay.
Right. So after that incident, I kind of took a regular job driving as a van driver. And in between that, I did work for one of the famous TV channels, Iman Channel. I did some work for them for about a year. Just after about a year after they launched, I worked for them for a year, helped make some kids shows and things like that. But really and truly, it was, it wasn't, I would say it's Dawah, but it wasn't like a, Dawah centric. It was entertainment.
Of course, So when we, obviously, and it's good you point that out, because when we talk about Dawah, we have this perception of what the Dawah is. Which it's not necessarily just that. There's other ways of engaging, which you were anyway engaging in. But coming back to this type of Dawah, if you like, quote, this type of, meaning, social media, more front foot type of addressing a need of the day type of thing. Academically and just generally as well. That you did more recently now with this topic.
And by the way, I have to, in a certain way, it's not blame, that's not the right word, but I have to thank you for encouraging me to speak more about it, because in 2017, when what happened was, in America, there was a number of individuals who worked for a program, the UAP task force, but this task force had previous to it being a task force, it had two sort of elements to it. It was ORSAP and ATIP. That's the sort of acronyms they used. But essentially what they were doing is they were monitoring using the advanced systems they have radar and satellite imagery. And what they found was some anomalous technology had been operating in America and in war zones. And they had a number of pilots as well who was witness to these strange craft appearing.
You're talking about UFOs.
Yeah, I'm talking about UFOs, but it has a new name. It's designated UAP now, which is unidentified anomalous phenomena. But in 2017, it was known as a UAP then, but it was a new acronym. Everyone still knew them as UFOs. And when you say the word UFO, what happens is Hollywood immediately comes to mind. So you think of, Strange Encounters of the Third Kind. Was that what it was called?
I think so. Yeah, that movie.
I always forget the name of the movie.
Spielberg movie.
That Spielberg movie. E.T. is another one that comes to mind. And a few other sort of Hollywood movies that. What's that one with Will Smith in it where they crash land?
What is it? Independence
Day. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Independence Day with the alien ship comes in, the mothership, and so when you hear those words, that's what you think. You think science fiction, but in reality, there's people for decades, 80 plus years, who have been saying that they've seen anomalous saucer-shaped or silver-looking craft in the sky. And in fact, and I know we're going to talk about this probably in another time, but in fact, the further you go back in history, you find reference to these things in the sky going way, way back. I mean, there's the Nuremberg case is a famous one. Won't get into it, but there were people who said there was a battle in the sky between chariots of fire. So these are things that have been known to mankind for some time. But now in the modern days, we look through the lens of science fiction. Yeah. So in 2017 is when these guys came forward. There was one particular man, his name is Lou Elizondo, who came forward and he said he worked for this ATIP or ORSAP program. And his job was to try to identify these craft using the available technology and find out what they are, what they're doing, what they're capable of doing. And he came up with the idea of something he called the 5 observables, which denote what a UAP is. So instantaneous travel was one of these things. So this is not a craft like conventional where you have some sort of build up or, like a jet that flies off, from an aircraft hangar and builds up speed from 0 to whatever. This thing travels instantaneously. So accelerates instantaneously. They don't have what would be associated with a conventional aircraft, like an exhaust system where heat comes out. These things don't have a heat signature. They don't show what you would expect thermo changes to a propulsion system, because whenever you turn an engine on, bro, it gets hot. Yeah. Anything you do, what you do is you put fuel in, you burn it, and out comes an exhaust. These things are not showing what you would expect. So these seem to have novel propulsion systems. So these are the type of work that he was doing in this program. And he identified these UAP, if you want to call them that, as legitimate things that occur across the world. It weren't just in America, as some people, try to say. Yeah. It's a global phenomenon.
Okay, so let's do this. There's a lot to unpack there, bro.
Yeah, sorry, bro.
So we're gonna take it one step at a time,
yeah, sure.
Because I know there's so much information you have inside your mind right now.
Yeah.
Which you have.
I'm not very good sometimes.
You have conveyed. We've done several videos on this elsewhere. On the IREP channel, we'll talk about IREP as well. And on my channel, we've done other videos in the past and other places. Yeah. But I want to sort of break this down for a person who's probably coming across this topic for the first time. And even if they've come across this topic, they're probably coming across the link between this topic and Islam for the first time. Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of things there which we'll get into. One is the historical aspect. You mentioned that this phenomenon has been taking place for a very long time, well before the American government started to show interest. Then there is that period of, if you like, the modern sort of pick up on this topic, which is since 2017 in America, Congress, etc. We'll get into that chunk, if you like. Yeah. And then there is that chunk which we'll eventually get to, which is, okay, well, fine, very nice and interesting. You've shared a lot of stuff with us, but what is the link with Islam here? What does Islam have to do with UFOs, etc.? So we'll get into all of this. But before all of this, the first thing I want you to get into, bro, is you touched upon, why this topic is important, right? Yeah. You mentioned from a Dawah angle, and we'll break this down. Yeah. You've had some personal experiences yourself as well. Yeah. Growing up. Yeah. Are you comfortable in sharing any of those things?
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind. The thing is, when I was younger, there was a separation between what you would consider paranormal and alien or UFO. As an adult, knowing about the jinn, I can quite confidently place anything that comes into the high strangeness as part of the same one phenomena. So when I was younger, there was quite a few events that occurred when I was young that you would put into either the paranormal or the UFO. So when I was younger, there was
This
one
is before Islam.
This is way before Islam. This was when I was a young boy. There was a time when I went into the woods where I live, and we, as a Muslim, we know that these places where people don't tend to hang around, and the woodland where I grew up, there are some ruins of old houses that used to, that were there from back in the day. But this woodland area, one of the times we went there, and it was me and, weren't just me, it was quite a number of us who saw this happen. But there was this small black sort of object that was spooking us in the forest. I wouldn't say it was a ball. It was more like a trapezium type shape thing.
How old were you?
About 11 years old.
Okay, so you know what you.
Oh yeah.
What
We were all up in the tree, and I was with older boys. I didn't hang around with children my age. I kind of hung around with teenagers when I was young, for whatever reason. Right, I was a bit more sharper than maybe most of the younger kids. Yeah, but so we were up in a tree and we was spooked by this thing for a good half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, maybe longer. My own brother was there. He was a witness to it. My older brother, Tom, he was there. And another event that occurred at the same woodland. Me and a bunch of friends were there. It was around Maghrib time. I can say, it was around sunset or after sunset. It was quite dark in the sky. And we saw what we thought at the time was a hot air balloon. And it was an oval-shaped ball of fire in the sky. We thought it was a hot air balloon that had fallen sideways. And loads of flames were dripping off it into the woodland below. So we were quite shocked at this. Like, it's not like you hang around in your local area. Number one, there weren't balloons that nobody flew balloons in that area, but things do come off course.
Yeah, of course.
And it was huge as well. So it was like the size of, if not bigger than a hot air balloon. But so it looked like either maybe one of them old Zeppelins or a hot air balloon that had caught fire and it was dripping all over. But the thing was, it stayed there and it carried on moving. It didn't fall apart and it didn't disappear, and it went off in the distance. The next day we went there, me and my friend, to see what had happened after all this stuff dripped off it.
So it's intriguing enough for you to want to return.
Oh yeah, the next day we were like, yeah, we've got to go there.
Yeah.
So I went there with my friend, his name's Matthew, and we collected metal samples that dripped off it. It wasn't fabric dripping. It was pieces of metal were dripped into the woodland area. And he collected a piece, and there was loads of it, by the way, all over the woodland.
Have you brought some of the pieces with you
I
today?
did, yeah. I kept.
No, have you brought them with you today?
No. I wish I. That
That would have been brilliant, bro, if you had something.
He had a piece about the size of a dinner plate, and I kept a piece for many years, and it's in my mum's house somewhere.
What did
I'm
it
sure.
look like?
It was the size of my thumb.
Yeah.
It was a piece of metal, and it had different colors of metal in there. So it had like an aluminium, maybe brass. But what was really strange about it was through the center of the piece of metal, so it's like the size of my thumb, it had, like a PCB composite that you would use on a computer chip board. So that, it was like an orangey color similar to that. And not like they cover it in green and then they put the metal on it for a chipboard, yeah? But it was like a solid piece that was the shape of a hexagon, all terminated through it. And I scratched my name onto that because you could scratch. So I put a little A on it to represent my name. And I kept it with me. I used to take it fishing. And even when I traveled abroad, it was like a little thing I kept with me for a very long time. And it had like this honeycombish structure to it. So, I saw somebody who claimed to be, this was years later as a researcher, I saw somebody pull out a piece of metal that looked identical to what I had. And it was very strange to see that there. And I was like, I used to have that. And then I remembered that story, and it obviously wasn't a hot air balloon because hot air balloons don't drip metal. But anyway, that was two events that occurred. Another one after I became Muslim. I did have a couple of events occur. As a Muslim, there was one, me and a friend Ayub, we were together studying in my room, and there was a huge ball of blue light spark in the corner of my room, quite bright. And at the same time, it went sort of dark, and then a load of car alarms went off. So whether that was some sort of pulse, like electrical surge that did that, but there was a huge ball of electric blue light in the corner of my room. It wasn't, there's no metal there, there's no wiring there, but it was like an orb of blue light that appeared in the corner of my room. My friend witnessed it. Another time I was in Morocco with some brothers they'll be witness to me that this happened.
Share that story?
Yeah, I'm going to tell the story. Because it's
brilliant in the way that it's fascinating. Not
So we was in Morocco. This is a true story. We was in Morocco, and me and the brothers, we were in the main square in Marrakesh. We were there for filming. That was the purpose of the trip there, to go filming. So we went there, and we were walking around. We got some juice from a shop where they sell fresh juice. Most of the Arab country go to, they have these like juice stores. Yeah. So we went to this little like shop that was selling juice. It was more like a market stall, not a shop. And where we were, there was like a clearing in the area, so it was quite an open part of the Marrakesh. And this guy, he comes along. I won't tell you everything what he did because it's probably not appropriate. But the guy was.
We could always cut it out. If need be.
I'll tell you the story. So he comes over this piece of paper. He's dressed in like a very coarse brown fabric over him, almost like a thobe, but like it was. He didn't look like it was clean or anything like that. Yeah, the guy looked dirty, and his face was dirty looking. And he was a short guy, probably about 5'4", something like that, and chubby. Bald, if I remember correctly, or he had maybe he was balding on his head, and he had this piece of paper, and he gets this piece of paper out and he shows us, and he's saying something in Arabic, and we had a guy with us to translate. This is before I went to study Arabic, and we had a guy with us who translated for us, and he's like, we asked him what's he saying, he's like, oh, he's just talking nonsense. The guy's just babbling. And he had this piece of paper, and he showed us, and it had some writing on it. He showed us on the other side, it had a.
He just came up to you and started showing you.
Yeah, he just showed us
while you're doing work.
Yeah, while we're just standing there, like after ordering these juice. I think we either had the juice or we just ordered it. But we're standing there, and this guy, he pulls out his paper. And he's showing us things and on the paper, and then I knew that he was a shaitan, bro, like an evil guy.
Yeah.
So a
magician or something.
Yeah, I said A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem or something, and then he did something very strange. Like we do the takbir.
Yeah.
So he lifted his hand up like we would with takbir, and then he started. He put his hands like that, but then he looked to his right and he started like doing a weird face. He was pulling loads of horrible faces. Then he took the piece of paper that he had and he folded it into like a stick.
Yeah.
So imagine you take like a newspaper, for example, and you fold it up and it becomes like a little baton.
Yeah.
And he took that baton, right, and he jammed it between his butt cheeks, like from over his clothes. Yeah. So very odd thing to do. Yeah. While he's in this sort of praying.
Strange.
It's funny.
But here's
the kicker right now. This is where it gets strange. Yeah. I said, he was shaitan. I knew that in Arabic, and I knew he was a devil. And the brother's like, let's just like get away from this guy.
This is broad daylight.
Broad daylight in the middle of the day in an open, clear area, and he was gone.
What do you mean gone?
He was there in front of us, and then he was gone. It wasn't like normal. He was there with us, and then he went over to another, or he went behind someone, or he went somewhere.
Yeah.
It's an open, clear area, and we were like, we've got to basically get away from this guy, and he was gone instantaneously.
Just disappeared.
The dude disappeared. And it was enough that all of us noticed that he had disappeared on us. And even the translator was a bit spooked by the whole situation. So it's me, another brother called, I'm going to say their names, Abu Bakr, Imraj was there, and a brother called Suleiman, another revert brother. We all witnessed this guy literally disappearing on us. So these were events that happened before I really got into researching the topic. Although from a young age, I'd always been interested and fascinated with the unknown.
So you've had experiences basically throughout your life.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting, bro, no one speaks about these things these days, right? Obviously, we live in a very secular, environment, which also affects Muslims. So you don't hear Muslims, and they may not speak about it for a few reasons. One may be that, okay, yes, we're in a secular society. These things don't really, although we believe in it as Muslims, they don't really exist at the same time. Right, in the sense that we exist, which is a problem in and of itself, right? But then also there's the element that many Muslims, when they have such strange experiences, sometimes they're really strange, like balls of flame in the sky, etc. They just can't contextualize it with their understanding of Islam. And we're going to get into this because Islam covers a lot of these things and how this phenomenon can manifest. So they don't know where to go, who to speak to. So the fact that you're speaking about it, I think is powerful because people can relate. You know, it'd be good to see if people they may share their own stories in the comment section.
That would be lovely.
Yeah. But yes, strange things happen to Muslims and non-Muslims. I even say to some of the brothers, you know what, if you go out and you interview 100 people on the street and you ask them, have you had a phenomenal experience or a strange experience or a paranormal experience? Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like 90% plus said they have.
Yep.
Because that's been my experience, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned these things. So anyway, you shared your story. Obviously, you've had experiences with these things in your life.
Yeah.
Now that obviously stays with you when you have such experiences. They don't just disappear. It's not like brushing your teeth in the morning.
No,
you know, it's like something unusual that happens once as a one-off.
Yeah.
Then you have this fascination that probably develops in regards to this topic. So
Yeah.
There is this interest in it, as naturally we all are. I have, let's be honest, a fascination towards this topic too.
Yeah, same.
So you have that, and then comes, you become Muslim, you start practicing, you're learning your deen, you're in Medina, 2017 arrives.
Yeah.
And,
and then whistleblowers start talking. So
what do you mean by whistleblowers?
Yeah.
What are they to do with America?
Sure.
What happened in 2017, which really sort of ticked this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will just add something else. When I was younger, I had a number of dreams. I will call them dreams for now because it suits best what. But in these dreams, I used to get taken, or I was taken by. In three or more dreams, I was abducted by what you would call alien abductions in these dreams.
So, for you personally, was it a physical abduction or was it more of a sort of?
It was a dream. So I would say it was like whatever you experience in a dream. Yeah. It's like that, but they were very real. You have different types of dreams. Some that, like I was even in my mind thinking whether I should mention this or not because it's a dream, right? Yeah. But I had quite a few like that, and some of them were very, very strong and horrible in nature, scary, and some maybe not so much. But the reason I mentioned that is because it does tie in with what we understand about the jinn. And it also ties in about the historical narrative regard to the phenomena. So the UFOs have been blamed for abductions for a very long time. Yeah. People have said that I've been in my home and I've been abducted. And this is also found in the Islamic history. Yeah. If you go and you look back at some of the events that occurred to people, and particularly Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, mashallah, he did such a good job in every area of Islam that's why he's Shaykh al-Islam. But, for him to collect these stories and to not be afraid to write them down as they occurred and preserve them as they were said to him, it's done us a great service now to tie this topic into the jinn phenomena. So going back to 2017, a whistleblower, essentially, these are people who, the word whistleblower is somebody who comes out and blows the whistle on untoward activities inside of, whether that be a corporate or a military environment. So someone who knows that there's bad actors or bad personnel, or even from the grassroots of the company, someone doing something wrong, whether they're stealing money, whether they're falsifying information. So they're saying that their product is good when it's not, or they're saying their product is of a high quality and it isn't. Like the recent Boeing whistleblowers who came out and exposed that Boeing weren't following the correct procedures when building the aircraft and things like that. So that's essentially what these guys did. These were whistleblowers who were from the Pentagon. And he said that he was effectively, his name was Lou Elizondo. He was
Elizondo was the first, right?
Yeah, he was the first major one.
That's 2017.
2017.
New York Times published, I think, an article on Elizondo himself.
Yeah. We had Chris Mellon as well, who was the ex-Undersecretary of Defense Intelligence, very high up in a government position. But Lou Elizondo, he is a controversial character, to say the least, yeah? Especially because of his work with counterterrorism. He was a counterterrorism agent. He was a counter-intel agent, to be precise. The reason I just wanted to make clear to the people who are watching, because like you said, a lot of people aren't going to know these connections, but this guy, he frames himself as a whistleblower who worked for who held a status in intelligence, which means that he had certain
Clearances.
should we say, security clearances that allowed him access to top secret information and above. So in America, you have different types of clearances. Same here in the UK, you can get lower level clearances all the way up to what we call enhanced DV, enhanced direct vetting. So, very high level clearances. And then you also have NATO clearances as well when you're working on joint tasks. This is just how the world works, right?
Yeah.
If you want to work on the top secret stuff or things that to do with military nature, you have to be cleared. So Lou Elizondo, he held very high clearances in the American government. I believe when he retired, he was a GS-14, which is essentially about as high as you can get in government service.
Right.
Spy level stuff, right? So this man, he said that he was effectively, he was unable to do his job properly. And this is why he quit his job, his role in the government, and he lost all of the privileges that came with that so that he could tell the American people what's really happening. And his job was to effectively research these anomalous craft. And what they want to do is find out how they work so they can recreate it as a protective entity for the military. Right?
So just so again, I'm going to reiterate.
Make
what
it simple for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm trying to put myself in that frame of mind where I don't know anything. So I'm approaching this for the first time. And it's a very hard thing to do. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. But, but okay, so look, what you're essentially saying is that the American government, the military...
He worked for a part of the American government in the Pentagon,
Okay, but what we're saying is that the American government military has been aware of...
Not yet. I'm not saying that yet. What I'm saying is he came out as a whistleblower. Yeah. And he worked for a department of the Pentagon. Yeah. His job was to investigate this thing. Yeah, but he was unable to.
Yeah, so what we're based on that, the assumption is that he was investigating something that the government was already aware of.
Yeah, he didn't know they were, though.
Sure. But there's unusual stuff that the military, the government, at least the American government, and I'm pretty sure other governments in the world, which we'll get to, they are aware of a phenomenon, quote unquote, because you use that word a few times, and we'll define that in a second. A phenomenon, meaning some sort of
unidentified area phenomenon.
A reality that exists that they can't put their finger on and understand fully, but it exists and it's there, and they've been studying it.
Yeah.
Based on what you said, that's what I'm assuming. They've been studying it and trying to reverse engineer.
That was his idea, yeah.
Right, okay.
Right. Now, he found out in his role that there was another part of the American government that was already doing that. So you sometimes we think of the government, especially here in the UK and America, that everybody knows everything. What each
it's like
person
in any
is
business
doing.
or
the person at the top, he knows what he's doing, and it's because he's running the project, right?
Yeah.
In reality, what Lou discovered was that it didn't work like that, and the task force he was part of, the ORSAP or ATIP, this task force, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, which is what he was running, is his claim. He found out that there were other parts of the government that were already working on this project.
Right.
But he was refused access to these programs. Okay.
So compartmentalization.
It was a compartmentalized program they call it an SAP, a special access program. And in the American government, they also have a further classification called a WUSAP, which is a waivered, unacknowledged special access program, which means that they're waivered from all other oversight. In Britain and in most countries in the world, any sort of military directive that a company's got, and it can be a private company that has clearance to make weapons or whatever it might be, they have to be acknowledged in paperwork, so that there is oversight, so that any sort of government entity can have oversight and know what they're working on, and know, so that they don't become bad actors and start, testing these new weapons on the people, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, but these certain programs, they were waived from those responsibilities, so they didn't have to answer to the law, which is very unusual. And he discovered that these programs were operating as waived, unacknowledged. That also meant that there was no paperwork that they existed, yet they were protected by the government. So when he wanted to get access to them, they refused. They said, you're not allowed to have access to these programs or what we're working on. We are aware of these UAP that you're monitoring, and you have no right or no access to what we know about them. So he was unable to do his job properly. That's what he said. If I need to know more about these things. I know that we've retrieved some of them that have come out from the sky.
Yeah.
I want to get access to these things so I can fulfill my task as in the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program to find out what level of threat these things are and what can we do or can we use or recreate them. And who do they belong to? Are they Russian? Are they Chinese? What are they? Drones? What are they? Where are they from? Yeah.
So he was basically looking at what they call the nuts and bolts side of it.
Yeah.
Figuring out what these things are from a national security standpoint, essentially. That was his specific job role.
Boom.
You know, it wasn't to understand the ontology of these things or, you know, the philosophical meaning behind these things or even the theological or spiritual significance. No, none of that. It's just, is this a national security threat? Seems to be the case. I need to study it. That was his role.
Yeah.
And when he tried to do that, he wasn't getting access.
No, yeah. He found that what he was doing it using the conventional method you would do, right? So he's looking at going and speaking to pilots who've seen them, getting reports from them. So one famous example is David Fravor, Commander David Fravor. He was a pilot in the Black Aces, which is probably the elite air squadron or Navy air squadron of the American Navy. So he was part of them. He witnessed one of these things. He called it a Tic Tac. Very famous story. Yeah. So Louis Elizondo...
we'll probably roll a clip of that.
I think we should.
Nimitz, isn't it?
The Nimitz incidents. And you know, David Fravor, you know, he quite clearly said that, you know, this craft operated and functioned in a way that was different than anything he'd been trained on. When you work, when you're a pilot for, you know, at the most advanced level, you have to know and be able to identify what
else is out there.
Yeah. So you can know if it's a Russian craft or if it's a Chinese craft or a drone. So you are read into programs where you're given information of the most advanced technology at the time. He said this thing was outside of anything he'd ever heard of or seen before. It didn't have wings. It was like a floating Tic Tac. It was a white Tic Tac looking craft, almost like you remember them big those big gas bottles you see, you know, they're white. You see some of them, you know, especially in like Arabia and places like that. People, they look like a big white Tic Tac thing. That's what he said he saw flying around. It didn't have a propulsion system of any that he could tell. And they have a video. So, you know, let's watch the video. It's a famous video, but let's check that out. Yeah.
So essentially these things, obviously we can't tell in the video, but from the reports and the story, these things are running circles around the best technology America has.
Yeah.
And what that means by extension is the best technology that the world has.
Yeah.
So essentially that in itself, from a military standpoint or a national security standpoint, whichever way you look at it, is alarming.
Dude, yeah.
And it's high priority.
So this is exactly how Louis Elizondo reacted to it. He said it was alarming and he wanted to get people to understand the danger because these things are flying over like it weren't just David Fravor's witness, but
there's many, isn't there?
Yeah, there's many.
Yeah.
And there's reports going back, you know, as far as you want to go, of these things over the most advanced and sensitive sites in America and in Russia. This ties heavily into the nuclear facilities that operate in America that create and hold and house the nuclear weaponry of America and Russia. And there are witnesses to these things visiting and hovering over these nuclear sites. Yeah. And Louis Elizondo spoke to people like that. But there's people who spoke about this and blew the whistle on this going back to the 70s, that these things would fly over bases and do very strange things. And in some cases, they tried to set the missiles off or turned them off completely.
Right.
So whatever this technology was, whoever it belonged to, it was floating over the most advanced and secure sites in America with impunity. No one knew they were coming. They would phase in and out of reality, acting in a way that we, according to what Lou understood at the time, were performing feats that couldn't be replicated by conventional technology. So he was obviously alarmed. He wanted people to take it seriously, and they stonewalled him and they didn't listen to him. So that's why he became the whistleblowers in 2017. So that was one of the main events, was the whistleblower Louis Elizondo, and accompanying with what was his name, Chris Mellon, who also was a defense. He also understood that there was a need to get this information out.
And that was published in the New York Times, which then blew up the whole...
Yeah, the New York Times article, it was called Black Projects and, you know, Money or something. A weird name, but it was basically the Pentagon's unknown UAP program.
Right, and that's where once again, UFO
that started the ball rolling.
Become a part of mainstream culture again, and people are talking about it. And then you have the congressional hearings, etc.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're talking about America, but you mentioned that other countries have been citing these objects, or militaries from other companies have been citing these objects. UK has been quite quiet about the topic. Have there been sightings in the UK?
Absolutely, yeah. There's one of the most famous, actually, which was, I think it was back in the early 90s, and it was the diamond-shaped UFO up in Scotland. There was a couple of chefs were out for a walk. They took a picture of this diamond-shaped UFO flying through the sky, and it became, immediately one of the most famous UFO cases in Britain at the time. And the people who took the picture went missing, and to this day, it's unknown what happened to them or where they went. But alongside that craft, that diamond-shaped metallic craft, was a RAF. I can't remember what the exact model of aircraft, but the RAF are flying either in tandem with it or chasing it. Right. But in the photo, you could barely see the original photo. You could not the original, but the one that was released. You could barely tell. It would just look awful. It had been reduced in quality so much it just looked like a couple of shadows. Right. But I think it was a year ago or slightly more, they released the original photo, even though about 3 years ago the British government decided to make that picture private, and we would not have access to it for another 80 years. Wow. So it's going to be 80 years before this photo was released from the archives. There was special dispensation given to the government or the military or whoever it was to allow them to keep this secret for a further 80 years, which is unusual because they reached the cutoff, which was like 30 years. They reached the cutoff of 30 years when it had to be released. But then they got special dispensation that this particular photo should remain secret for a further 80 years. However, somebody who had been holding on to that photo for many years, who had a copy of it, who is the only other known copy of it, he was brave enough to release it to the public about 1.5 years ago. Now, it's not a fantastic photo because you just see this diamond-shaped aircraft, and we can show the picture up on the screen, right? It's just a diamond-shaped aircraft, and you can see a craft, and you can see next to it a smaller, aircraft flying with it or chasing it, however you want to understand it. But the reason it was kept secret is because of the connotations of it. Why would the government want to keep secret a photo that isn't of a UFO, right? And why would they try to get special allowances to keep it secret for another 80 years if it wasn't significant in any way? But the picture itself, it's not amazing, but it is what it says it is. It is a genuine picture of one of these strange crafts, one of these UAP. So the British government is well known to be part of it. We've had, back in the 50s, we had the UFO working group. Then there was the Condign report that came out in early 2000s. This report is... funny enough, normally you find out who the author is when the British government release papers. And but whoever it is, whoever the scientist was who was part of the project, he's redacted. We don't know which scientist it was. But they admit that they're unsure of what these are. They're more than likely some sort of plasma phenomena that occurs, which ties heavily in with what we regard as the Jinn. But the point being is that the British government, the American government, in fact, the entirety of Five Eyes. So Five Eyes is made up of Britain, America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. These 5 countries have been alleged by a number of whistleblowers to be working together on this UAP project.
So it wouldn't be surprising. Okay, so here's the thing, Farouk.
Yeah, sure.
We're getting to the point now. So again, I'm putting myself in the mindset of someone that doesn't know or is the first time coming across this information. Okay, very interesting. You've given us a bit of a history of how the American government, specifically since 2017, has been researching this topic.
Yeah.
You spoke about some of the other governments, historical cases. It seems like, if we go by what you're telling us, and the evidence is out there.
Yeah, it is,
that the world governments, in particular the American government, have been dealing with some sort of phenomenon that they cannot fully grasp or understand. Yeah. And it's very unusual. Where in the world is the link to the Jinn? Like all I'm hearing is, okay, UFOs, aliens, probably extraterrestrials from another planet, possibly. Yeah. Universe is vast. You know, we don't have to go into the theological stuff yet. We'll get to that near the end.
Sure.
But just generally from a logical perspective, the universe is vast. There's so many stars within our own galaxy and elsewhere, and it's very possible that there's other planets and
Sure.
So from what you've said, it seems like we're dealing with extraterrestrials, and that is one of the key ideas that's out there. So build a case for us very succinctly.
Sure.
Where is the link to the jinn? What are you doing? What gymnastics are you engaging in to give us this type of hypotheses? What we call the Jinn Hypothesis.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How? Like,
Oh, okay,
explain that to me.
Yeah, this is the crux of. So, just to recap briefly, right? We've got these whistle. It's not just Lou. We've had a number of whistleblowers since then. We would predominantly talk about 2017, but we've had a number of congressional hearings of other whistleblowers coming forward.
Yeah.
One famously is named David Grush.
Yes.
He says they have a entire reverse engineering program that have been operating in secrecy. They call it a legacy program that has been collecting these craft, reverse it. So just to establish that these things are real. And it isn't a state actor. It isn't Russia. It isn't China. This is as they describe it, a non-human intelligence. And this is where we start making the link to the jinn. So effectively, if we collect what the whistleblowers say and we accept at face value what they're saying, is that there is a non-human intelligence, and according to David Grush, that it is more than likely a interdimensional.
What does he mean by interdimensional?
He's saying that they're not from another planet, but rather they live on this planet, just in a place where we can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example.
Like a parallel
a parallel universe, or parallel dimension. But I'll give you an example that we can all sort of understand, yeah? The microbiology of our bodies is, for want of a better word, another dimension, a two-dimensional universe that exists inside our body. If you were to tell someone 300-400 years ago that on the tip of your nose is an entire life of creatures that
entire civilization,
it's like a life form on the tiny tip of your nose. There's a life form there that part of the regulatory system of your body keeps you healthy. And if you upset those creatures, they make you sick. But if you look after them and look after you'll be fine. Like, this sounds bizarre, but that is the actual reality. We are, if for want of a better word of describing it, we are interdimensional beings towards these microbiotic life forms. We regularly take medicines that manipulate this world, this microbiotic world. We take samples out of our body, we put it in the microscope, and then we create synthetic versions in order to manipulate that world again. We create clones, if you like, and put them back in our body to make them do what we want it to do. It sounds very bizarre when you look at us from the perspective of the microbiology. We are, in essence, a very strange creature. We inject, we put these metal devices in our arms and extract blood. For the world of the microbiology, they're seeing this silvery, shiny thing come through the roof of their house and abducted them. I'm just presenting to the viewers the idea of there being, an interdimensional. It makes, even obviously, from our perspective, it makes sense with regard to microbiology and with regard to the atomic world. We're at scale, between atoms, there's a huge amount of distance between each atom, but from us, it forms a solid object that we can stand on. Very bizarre, right? But that's what we know from the instruments we use to understand scientifically. As is described in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Iblis and his tribe, they see you from a place where you don't see them. So Allah establishes, for any Muslim out there, I would hope that every Muslim believes in the jinn wholeheartedly, as is described in the Quran and the Sunnah. So the jinn are a creature that lives in a place where they see us and we don't see them. So we are immediately at some sort of disadvantage because of sight. They see us, we don't see them. They can interact with us in a way that we can't interact with them. They can whisper into our minds where we can't whisper into theirs. They can go inside of our body if you accept the consensus is that they can, possess the human being. The jinn fly, as is described in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They come and go, they visit, and then they disappear. They come and they go, and they visit human beings, interchangeably, or they come into this planet or into our part of this world, and they go away, however you want to interpret that. And they come in the forms of dogs and other such creatures. And the Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah expands it beyond dogs, and he mentions that they come in other forms like birds and so on and so forth. So the jinn, when we look at who the jinn are and what they're capable of doing and how they're known as handigrafters and builders, as is mentioned by Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar in his book, The World of the Jinn and Devils, he actually speculates that the TVs and phones and things like that were probably created aforetime by the jinn, he mentions a historical report from the time of Shaykh al-Islam, that how certain devices were given to some of these masters who worked alongside the jinn, and they gave them devices that sound like the modern smartphone. But the Sheikh, Dr. Umar al-Ashqar, at that time, they didn't have smartphones when he wrote the book. So he said, it seems that these jinns had handicraft back in them times, like TVs and other things that we were unaware of. So Sheikh, it's not just me who's made this link. Many scholars, or at least Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar, made the link to technology in the jinn beforehand. Allah describes them as builders in the Quran, that they build things, and they built amazing things for Sulaiman. And they had capabilities, as mentioned in the Quran, that other human beings didn't have, because they had knowledge of a book that Allah allowed them. And by the blessing of Allah, he subjugated the jinn to Sulaiman alayhi salam, and they were able to bring the throne instantaneously.
Yeah.
So when we observe and we hear that these whistleblowers are saying, that Five Eyes, these five governments, are working together on a project that is monitoring and collecting handicrafts created by non-human intelligence. These handicrafts give them exceptional capabilities of travel, so instantaneous travel from one spot to another, exactly as is mentioned in the Quran.
Yep.
That they see us from a place we don't see them, and they phase in and out of reality. This is exactly how it's described by people on the inside. There's one particular scientist who had an event occur to him, who was his name's Dr. Masters. He's actually wrote a piece on it now, and it's been published.
Crypto-terrestrial
crypto-terrestrial
paper
published
on ResearchGate.
Yeah, was it? And it went through Stanford University. It was one of the bigger.
It was 3 academics, 3 PhDs.
That's right.
2 PhDs and 1 academic. I'm not sure, but they published the paper on research.
Crypto-terrestrial. He had a very, very anomalous event occur to him with regard to possession. So when we sort of line up, and we unfortunately we haven't had the time to get into all of the stories that circulate this, but this is where the Jinn link comes in. What we have here is a number of whistleblowers saying that our governments are working clandestine, monitoring and capturing devices that are not made by other people on this planet. These are devices that are super advanced, way further ahead technologically than we are, and they're giving the American and the Brits some sort of advantage over other countries in the world because of these types of technology. And they seem to be very, very obsessed about keeping this quiet, so much so that they will kill people who are going to blow the whistle on this. And there has been, and there is many reports of whistleblowers saying that people have died who have tried to come out and to bring let's say more concrete proof, i.e. actual technology. People have tried to they've been killed. So that's where I think the link to the jinn come through, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that on the day of judgment there will be an incident that will occur. On that day Allah will address the jinn, and he will say, "Oh people of the jinn, you have misled many of mankind." But then a group from mankind will step forward and they will say, "Yes, some of us made use of others, and we have now reached the term that you have appointed us." So there is a group from humanity who work alongside them. And this is what seems to be indicated by these whistleblowers, that there is a group of humanity who are aware of these things, maybe in awe of them. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that some of the most advanced military facilities have a lot of symbology related to idolatry.
What do you mean?
I'll give you an example. There seems to be an obsession with the zodiac. So you'll find a lot of the programs, the space programs, and moreover, like the history of these space programs are entwined with black magic and people who seem to participate in the occult. And it's well known, by the way. I'm not saying something for people who don't know and haven't done the research. It sounds odd, but in these most advanced and let's say secretive programs, many researchers, one is Diana Pasulka, for example, has highlighted that a lot of the names of the programs, a lot of the names of the ships. So Diana Pasulka has mentioned that many researchers in these fields like space and in the rocket program, like Jack Parsons, for example, he believed that information was coming to him from another creature that was telling him, and they call it, even in the modern times this happens, by the way, like, don't think this is restricted to the 50s. There are people who are going on the record today saying that I'm not inventing these technologies or creating them,
downloads,
but rather this is being fed to me from another creature that I'm in contact with. People say muses of old is the exact same thing. A muse would come in their mind. People put it like down to like a cute or poetic way of saying, thought, but really a muse was actually just a jinn giving information to people. So this Jack Parsons, he believed he was receiving information from another creature that was telling him how to create these rockets, right? And guiding him towards these discoveries that he made. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-An'am, as it mentioned, and thus we have made for every prophet an enemy from devils from mankind and jinn, inspiring into one another decorative speech in delusion. But if your Lord had willed, they would not have done it. So leave them and that which they invent. In here we have some indication, to say the least, that inspiration and ideas do come from the devil, and it's put into our mind, and they mislead and misguide. Even black magicians, people who do black magic, they have these little codes, little drawings, little writings that they do. Now, to draw a little picture of this and to put the letter ba, or to draw somebody's face, some of these tawis that people have opened. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos. When they cut them open, there's weird pictures and writings and things like that. This is all part and parcel of, how the shayateen and the devils misguide mankind. And this is no different than that. Except instead of it being a tawis, it's a computer program.
It's just a new age version.
New age tawis, bro.
Parsons' story is very interesting because Parsons was the direct student of Aleister Crowley.
Yes.
And Crowley was himself trying to make contact with this being called Lam, as he referred to. And Parsons seemed to be doing the very same thing in the deserts of, I think, California, if I'm not mistaken, where he was trying to make contact with these beings to inspire him. And he's known as one of the founding fathers of rocketry in America.
Yes, absolutely.
A big figure behind NASA, etc. So we know he was engaging in rituals in the desert. This is history. People can go read this up. I think it was called the Babylonian workings or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
Which was, occult practice essentially. And it was also fascinating, bro, is that this phenomenon of humans trying to engage with these beings to attain some sort of information or knowledge has been going on for a very long time.
Yes.
Even in modern Western history or the Enlightenment, many of the key movers and shakers and figures who were pushing on the public front materialism and secularism and atheism and progress and science and all of this stuff, behind closed doors, they were engaging in occult practices.
100%.
They were trying to make contact with these beings and entities. They were engaging in alchemy, doing all this stuff, right? So you see that, and again, from that we see that there's this trend, historical trend, which repeats itself, where certain people who are movers and shakers or want to become movers and shakers within society turn to the occult or trying to engage with these beings who we refer to as the jinn.
Yes.
Now, what you're saying by Parsons' story, and I think this is an important link to make, is what you're highlighting by the Parsons' story is that if we're looking at this modern UFO phenomenon now, American government, craft, etc., if you trace it back to, I think it was the early 40s when these sightings started to happen.
Yeah.
Just before the first recorded popular sighting of Thomas Arnold, which took place.
Yeah,
late 40s, I think.
That's right.
46, 47, I don't remember the date exactly. Parsons was engaging in these rituals in the desert.
He was.
Just before this.
Yes.
And then the floodgates open. right? So he's engaging in occult practices in the desert, trying to contact these beings. Few years later, or shortly after, you have this huge flap of UFOs, and this whole thing comes into existence. Parsons was somehow linked to what's his name, Thomas Arnold as well.
Yeah.
They were friends or
Yeah.
had mutual friends. And then that gave rise to the Collins elite. I don't know if you want to touch upon that.
Yeah, we could,
But I think
yeah.
the point to emphasize what you're saying is that there is a clear occult link with
No
even
doubt.
this modern UFO phenomenon, which is
doubt.
being witnessed in America.
And I'd say even science.
Mhm.
Not because I will say there is a huge difference between black magic and science. They're not the same thing. One is an endeavor to understand how things work so that we can make products from materials or whatever it might be. And another one is eliciting the help of a non-human intelligence to do your bidding. And it's normally it's not benign, right? You're not, oh, can you make me a cup of tea?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not doing a ritual for a cup of tea,
Yeah.
right? So it's normally for manipulating other human beings to do your bidding, right? So they're two different things. But I will touch on something that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said. Now, Shaykh al-Islam, he wrote extensively on the topic of the jinn, but one of the things he highlighted in his workings, and I think it was in the Friends of Allah and the Friends of the Shaitan, his famous book, and it's also quoted by the Dr. Umar Ashqar in his book, The World of the Jinn and Devils, is that the alchemists in his time who were working on trying to understand the world, they had strange phenomenal experiences. One example that he mentioned was that whenever they were trying to process the plant life, so like whatever it was, to try and
Make
extract a compound,
yeah.
that potentially inside it, they were doing so under the advice of the plant. So the plant would speak to them and tell them of its beneficial properties inside it.
That's an explanation for possibly how ayahuasca and these
Yeah,
substances were discovered.
100%.
Hundreds of thousands of potential plants. I mean, to stumble upon but it's interesting.
And what's funny about bringing up ayahuasca is that you have to know that inside that plant is that compound, but B, you have to take the inhibitor first. Otherwise, your stomach would just destroy any active dimethyltryptamine or whatever it is. Yeah. So that can't survive in the stomach acid. So you have to take with it an inhibitor. And there's only one other plant that has that inhibitor in that jungle. So to take both together, you couldn't stumble on that. It's not something like, it seems like something the devil would say. Yeah,
so are you saying that the jinn were behind the discovery of ayahuasca, Farouk?
I would say that if there's anyone to blame for the discovery of ayahuasca, it's not some shaman in the woods just testing things out. He's more than likely been shown the way. If we accept what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is saying is true, then you also could mention that some people inside these programs have said that we've heard voices emanating from the craft. Some people inside these programs tend to think that maybe the craft itself is alive. What they've recovered isn't just a piece of technology, but somehow inside it is a life form, which it sounds very bizarre. But when we know what we know, like from the example of the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Khalid bin Walid was tasked with dealing with one of these shayateen, he was sent to go destroy the idol. And it was the idol of one of the tribes of Ta'if. So he went there and they destroyed it and they returned to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you haven't destroyed it, go back. So I think it was Ali and Khalid. Forgive me if I made a mistake there, but they went back and they found a disheveled looking creature there with long hair that came across feminine, almost like a female, but it wasn't a human. So they dealt with the matter and returned to the Prophet with the evidence, right? They carried the evidence back with them. And Rasul said, now you have destroyed. So that some of these idols in the time of the Prophet weren't just pieces of rock, but rather they had some strange element to them because the jinn would inhabit them and enjoy being glorified by the human beings.
That's very interesting, bro. So look, one of the sticking points to this whole subject is, when you're talking about UFOs, these are craft flying through the sky. Yes. Obviously, you've dispelled some of that. D.W. Pasulka mentions as well, what you see in the mainstream media, craft, etc. It's not really the case on the ground. When you really study these cases, there's much more to it.
Oh, way
It's not only just craft. There's balls of light. And a lot of times, it's that secular projection, the techno-secular projection on these things. You see a light and you say craft. because your mind's conditioned to. Whereas there's nothing about it that suggests that there's definitely a craft.
Yeah, exactly.
It could just be a form or light, etc. Plasma, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's one thing. So I think you dispelled that. Okay, it may not necessarily be a craft that
No.
people are seeing.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It could because normally people are just seeing a light, right?
May I just interject quickly?
Yes,
Because
yeah.
it might tie in
of
what you're
course.
saying.
Yeah.
When you read the books by Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he also mentions that in their time, people used to be carried around in the sky. It was well known. There was a guy who used to perform Hajj. This is one of the more well-reported stories, and it's by all means and purposes a true story. This guy used to perform Hajj on a flying donkey. Yeah, it sounds so bizarre.
It's there.
But yeah, it's right there, and it's people can go and read it. You can go and learn about that story. And his son, who inherited the donkey on his father's death, thought that he would do Hajj on the donkey too. And when he went out into the desert on the donkey, it refused to fly him until he prostrated to it.
Wow.
So he killed the donkey. He's out, the donkey revealed itself to be a devil, a shaitan or a jinn. But I will do for you this Hajj if you do what your father used to do for me and do 2 rak'ah and sajda for me. And he refused, and he killed the donkey, and when he exposed his father. And he was humiliated by what his father used to do. That's one such story. But there was multiple stories of people in Asham in those days. When the Muslims were the superpower, they were the ones that the shayateen and jinn used to be alongside and influencing and trying to get these so-called masters. I won't mention the sect, but these masters were very much in contact with, and one even said that the shayateen used to put things in his mouth. He'd be sitting there and stuff would just come in his mouth and he'd spit it out, black sticky substance, like a resin. There was another one who used to be alone in the desert, and Shaykh al-Islam mentioned that he would go walk away someplace and come back, and he would have a load of fresh fruits. And they would find in Yemen or another country that fruits had disappeared that day, Very bizarre, strange things of flying around and things disappearing and reappearing. And this is exactly as is described by these whistleblowers, that things are flying around, people being carried through the air. I don't know if you noticed, but there is some mention of levitation that people are looking into now with regard to the phenomena, because people get carried through the sky. And this is something that's mentioned in the books, in the 12th century. Sorry to...
So essentially what you're doing, one of the main sticking points, you're saying that potentially, based on what we know from the Islamic sources, it could either be the case that as the jinn are known as builders in the Quran, that they have built for people in the past, and there are some stories recorded in the Quran as well, that these jinn could simply be building these supposed craft, and whizzing them around through the air for one objective or another, which is enticing the leading powers of the world to, because obviously
there's another hadith on that, by the way.
To get an upper hand is key, right?
Yeah.
So that may be a type of enticing of these people, etc. Or it could be also, or adding to that, could be the case that they're inhabiting these objects that they are constructing somewhere, right, and then showing people. But the point is that this can be explained via the jinn phenomenon. It's not just the case of jinn and physical craft, two separate things. No, there's a link. You've established that historically. I want to quickly move on to one more area. So we've looked at appearance in a sense. People seeing balls of light, plasma, craft, etc. People also seeing cryptids. We didn't really get into that.
No.
The strange creatures that appear and disappear, right?
And it's associated with the UFO phenomena. It's not like it's a separate thing. Some people have mentioned that a UFO would appear, and alongside it you would find something you would probably describe as a Sasquatch or what are they called?
Bigfoots. Yeah.
Bigfoot or Sasquatch looking creature would be associated with UAP UFO. This is also other strange cryptids, alien-looking beings. The little short
grey
dudes,
types,
with the small grey things that look like almost humanoid with sort of big black eyes, and so there's a biology or a creature associated, should we say, with these crafts.
Strange cryptid types. Creatures. Okay, so and we can explain that by the jinn, because we know the jinn could take different forms,
absolutely,
etc. That's well known. Then you also have this. We didn't touch upon this, but maybe you want to give us a little bit of information on this. Is what's today known as the Hitchhiker Effect.
Yeah.
Thomas Arnold, as far as I remember, his daughter or someone related to him later mentioned that after his sighting, he had some continuous experiences. Something followed him. We know that this is very well known. Skinwalker Ranch. What's his name? the reporter.
George
Not
Knapp?
Cobalt, Knapp.
Knapp,
Knapp
yeah.
mentions that there's this phenomenon which follows you back, haunts you, etc.
Yeah.
Where do we find this amongst the jinn? Is there such a thing when you talk about the jinn?
Yes. So, in fact, it's quite common, especially in Muslim countries, that you're discouraged from researching them for this reason.
Yeah.
That you can kind of like, you can cause your own difficulties through wanting to learn more and know about them. You kind of get on their map and they will follow you around. And it's known as well through, some people end up with sort of like a possession phenomena, whereby something, you know, they lose their memories. This is another thing about the shayateen, the jinn, in, I think it's Surah Al-Kahf, where the story of Musa alayhi salam and his young helper, when they travel to meet with Khidr alayhi salam, what he's told to do is when the fish makes its way strangely into the sea, that's where you'll meet him, right? And his young servant, people say it was Yusha bin Nun, but whoever it was, he was with him, and he saw the fish go in a strange way into the sea. And then in that ayah, in that story, he blames the shaitan.
Yeah.
He says, none but the shaitan made me forget. So the shaitan, he has this, I wouldn't say ability, but he can make us forget things.
Yeah.
So we forget. Adam forgot and we forget. But the shaitan, he can manipulate this forgetting. So people forget what happened. It was what even Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, that sometimes people be in their homes and they would say, I was in my home. And he said, and I was dragged through my house, through the wall, and I found myself outside my home. And people who have abduction phenomena, they have the same thing. This also occurs with regard to the possession phenomena. So when it can be that people who become possessed, it could be for one reason or another, but poltergeist activity is associated with it. So you go to your home, but then things move around in your house. Things go missing, things falls down that weren't falling down before. So this is a well-known and associated aspect of the jinn, that they can follow you around, they can possess you, they can become attracted to you. There's some cases of the scholars talking about, this is a more modern case, but this was, I always forget the sheikh's name. He's from Saudi Arabia. He deals with Khalid al-Hibshi.
Yeah.
May Allah bless him. Yeah. But, you know, so associated phenomena with the jinn of them following around, and poltergeist activity is normal. Causing fires as well. They can sometimes cause fires in the home. So, but that's associated with sort of like a hitchhiker effect.
Yeah.
Them following you around. And this happens with people who are on these programs, who have observed something or are interested in knowing more about them. They end up having an associated, they call it hitchhiker effect. In one such case, the family of a man who was researching this topic at Skinwalker Ranch, his name's Jay Stratton. He was, and maybe actually one of the more higher level whistleblowers. He's very high up in the Pentagon, working for he was the head of the UAP task force between, I think, like 2012 and 2017 or something. So he really did research this topic, and he had this hitchhiker effect follow into his home. And one of the manifestations of this thing was what looked like, he said, a dog-looking human, a wolf-looking human who's stood up on two legs, and it was in his garden, looking at his wife while she was, you know, in the house. And she obviously become absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
Like, to see a dog, you know, a random dog, it's not a thing, but for it to be on two legs bipedal. So we look back to the hadith, and there is a hadith. There is a couple of riwayat that talk about the one that they come in the form of a dog, but there's one particular riwayat, and you know, we share it, and it'll be on the screen for the viewers, inshallah. I'll send it to you. But in this particular story, the creature came and it had paws like a dog. And when the Sahaba shook his hand, I believe it was Umar radiallahu anhu, he saw the hand and it was the paw of a dog. So this association with cryptid type creatures. And we have to remember, by the way, we are people of adhkar. We are people who remember Allah. We worship Allah. So generally, like these things, they can affect you, but not too much as Muslims. because we remember Allah, we talk about Allah, we worship Allah, you know, we do our dhikr, we remember what to say when we leave our home. So we're generally protecting ourselves a lot. For non-Muslims, they have none of this protection. So they seem to be affected a lot more than perhaps a Muslim would be in a similar scenario.
Yeah.
But I can safely say from my own experiences that since researching this topic, I've had a number of strange cases happen, and I've spoke to other people who deal with ruqya and things like that, and they too have had similar experiences, and their advice was to, you know, to do adhkar, to try to protect yourself as much as you can and ask Allah for help. And, you know, what more can you do than that?
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah, when Allah's help is sought, who else can help?
Of course,
you know?
of course.
SubhanAllah.
And one more thing before we come to a close, abduction. You mentioned that a couple
Yeah.
of times. Obviously, we know anyone that knows anything about the UFO topic, they know abductions is a huge element of it, right? John Mack, psychiatrist,
And it's the most ridiculed as well.
absolutely. He was, and Mack was the head of psychiatry in Harvard, in America, a well-respected professor of psychiatry, head of the department, and he wrote an entire book on
Called
abductions,
Abduction.
which you started to read and couldn't finish because it was just too much, right? No, you don't want to read that type of stuff people go through.
Very traumatic.
And he was he's an academic writing about this stuff, right? So and he took it very seriously, this whole topic. He didn't see it as just an illusion of the mind, people, you know, mass hysteria. He saw it beyond that from his
He
research.
actually writes that was his view in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it changed. And then he started to get ridiculed, etc. And there's a whole story to that. But
Yeah.
point is, abductions are well known within the UFO research field. Most Muslims or even non-Muslims probably haven't heard of abductions being related to the jinn. We know possession. That's the main thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But abductions, what is the link there?
So there is a hadith from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, goes back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he effectively said that, you know, come Maghrib time, bring your children in the home. Yeah, because this is the time when the jinn spread out and they kidnap. So be aware at that time, because they spread out at that time of night and they kidnap. So you have to be careful. Yeah, there's a very for those who are interested in the topic, there is a famous hadith, and you'll find it's very easy to find online. It's you know, hadith. It's a Sahih hadith according to I think it's Sheikh Albani or Sheikh Al-Nut. But either way, this hadith is authenticated, and in it is a story in the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And Umar, he just to paraphrase the story, Umar had an incident where a man went for Isha Salah and he never returned home. So his wife became concerned. Her husband left for prayers, never came back. So a year or two passed by and she went to Umar, for 3-4 years even in one narration. And she requested that, you know, my husband never came home. He ran off and I want to get remarried. So Umar, by all intents and purposes, he realized, you know, this guy's gone. Maybe he's run off to join his brothers on the front lines. So he nullified the marriage and he allowed that woman to marry someone else. Yeah. All of a sudden, the guy comes back to Umar. He went home. His wife is now married to someone else.
This is much later, right?
Yeah, much later on. This is 4 or 5 years after. Yeah. So 4 years, I think the report said. He goes to his home and his missus is like married. He's like, what's going on? Oh, why are you married? He seems confused and he goes to Umar and he said, you know, you nullified my marriage. She married someone else. And Umar was annoyed. He's like, subhanAllah, you disappear for years and then you come back and complain at me and like no one know what happened to you. You didn't tell anyone. And he said, oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, but I have an excuse. He said that when I left for Salah, I was kidnapped kidnapped by a bunch of jinn. And they took me as a slave.
Some of the translations even say abducted, literally.
Yeah, it literally says abducted. Yeah, I was abducted by the jinn. In fact, that's what it says. I was abducted by the jinn and they kept him as a slave. And his life there was, he did it. The thing is, the hadith isn't that long. It's long compared to many hadiths, but it's not that long. So Umar asked him, like, what was your food like? And he said it was a very disliked thing. And, you know, effectively he was, what it sounds like he was enslaved by them and he lived with them wherever they are. So I don't think, it doesn't come across like he was on this planet or in this part of the planet, but maybe in another part of the planet that we don't have access to because we're human beings, right? But this guy, he said that one day a group of Muslim jinn fought with these jinn who kidnapped him, and they found him among the booty because there seemed to be other slaves maybe.
Right.
And they asked him, and they questioned him, and they found that he was a Muslim. So they said, we find in their understanding, we're not allowed to keep you as a slave because you're a Muslim. So you have two choices. You can stay with us, so stay with them in their world, the world of the jinn, or we'll return you to your home. And he said, I want to be returned. In his statement, he said that they would have this black sort of stick that he would follow by night and he would rest by day.
Oh.
And in another riwayah, he found himself in a cave near Medina. So if we bring the two together, that he had some sort of travel home back to a cave where they dropped him, which we know they love to go to places where we don't reside. So maybe there's something in that. I'm not sure. But this report is well known. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah talks about it as well. That the masters who used to work with the shayateen, who desired a person to be with, to lay with, the jinn would abduct them and bring them to them.
Wow.
So this would happen. And it is well known and associated with the UFO phenomena that they abduct children and they take them. And it's also well known that people get abducted and sometimes they never come back. So there's a really, really good research that's been done on this. It's called the Missing 411.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. But it talks about all of these. We're not talking about cases that can be someone was like got on a bus and was never seen again. We're talking about people in the middle of nowhere who are with family who pop off to the toilet and are never seen again.
Gone. Yeah.
And they'll bring dogs in and everything to try to find them, and the scent will end where the person went to the toilet. And there's no scent of them going anywhere else. They will literally disappear. So this is a prominent evidence of the truthful, not only truthfulness of Islam, but the accuracy of the information that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us with regard to the jinn, and who the Prophet I sent him explained to us, because there's much more that could be said about the Prophet I sent him, what he said, and the incidents with the jinn. In fact, it's mentioned in the hadith of, I always forget his name, may God forgive me, Abdullah bin, not Abdullah bin Umar, I always forget, may Allah forgive me, yeah? But he was the one who, the Prophet I sent him, he went and met with the jinn just outside of Mecca. And they all became afraid because they said, we thought the jinn had kidnapped him. They literally say that. So it was a well-known phenomena in the time of the Arabs of the jinn kidnapping people. There's even another, it's a weak hadith where the Prophet ﷺ talked about a man from Yemen, which is where the word superstition comes from. You know, they call it a tale of, my memory today, my brother. Yeah, there's the word they use in Arabic, and we call it like a tale or a fable. But the word is associated with this man from Yemen, and that's where it came from. And it's a weak hadith. And the Prophet I said him is telling some stories to his wives, allegedly, according to this weak report. And one of the wives said it sounds like one of those stories, you know, a fable.
Yeah.
And the Prophet I sent him said, well, actually, that man who this word is associated with, this fable, he's actually a man from Yemen who used to be abducted by the jinn, and they used to show him the cities that they are from. So their world is advanced. It has buildings in it. They have jobs. They have wives. They have children. They live, you know. So they build things. They have places they live in, so on and so forth. So it's not as, it's not as different as people probably imagine. They're very similar in the way that we live. So
bro, there's so much to discuss.
Oh yeah, I think we're only just starting.
Tip of the iceberg,
literally,
as they say, and literally, like, that is the case. So we're definitely gonna have more episodes, bro. Yeah, we're gonna have to do part 2 and part 3, part 4, maybe part 5.
Yeah.
But just to sort of round things off today, the very last thing I want to ask you, bro. We've talked about the UFO topic. We've talked about the jinn. We've shown the connection between the two, and I think the arguments have been quite convincing. I would say it's a type of inference to the best explanation.
Yes.
It's not that we're shying away and trying to squeeze a type of jinn of the gaps type of explanation. It's not the case. Because theologically, we can acknowledge, life out there to some degree, etc. That's another discussion in and of itself. But that being said, bro, I mean, we touched upon the point of Dawah and you coming back to the Dawah in this topic. How do you think, as a sort of concluding point to this discussion, how do you think this specific topic of UFOs, what's happening in America, etc., how is this relevant to the Dawah?
Yeah.
And what do you think the implications are of not understanding what's going on and of understanding what's going on?
Yeah. There's a two-way street on this. There is the Dawah to non-Muslims. These are people quite often, brother, who don't have an issue in believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or believing in the unseen. There's no barrier to that. Quite often the Dawah has been on a platform where it's a complete atheist and a Muslim trying to convince them of the unseen, right? And that that's been where the Dawah has occurred, because they've had the baton of leading the world with regard to thought and theory for a very long time. These materialists, atheists, right? So, and you guys have done a fantastic job at IRA and, what's evolved from that, like Sapience and so on and so forth, of dealing with these type of doubts and, so mashallah, tabarakallah. But what seems to be going on behind the scenes is that there is an evolution, for want of a better word, of that into something that's a little bit more spiritual. So they're going to take atheist materialism and it's going to evolve into
a new
something,
age type of
new age thought, where spirituality isn't actually that strange. And we need to be part of that discussion, because the admission to the existence of a non-human intelligence, more than likely from another dimension next to our own, is right now causing ripples in the scientific community. You have to look at Avi Loeb, who knows for sure that there is a non-human intelligence, and his Dr. Loeb, or however you say his name properly, he is very influential, and I believe he's based out of Harvard.
Gary Nolan,
huge academic. He's been put up for a Nobel Peace Prize, I believe, for his work on biology, microbiology. But and I'm not that familiar with the work he does, by the way. But these are people who are powerhouse. We've also mentioned Dr. Masters as well, but others included. Puthoff, who's Hal Puthoff, who's a physicist, one of the great physicists who's worked on the most sensitive projects in America, and others we could name. A lot. Lakatsky is another one. Dr. Lakatsky, who's also working on the most sensitive projects in America. These are all people who have and are aware of a non-human intelligence, and they're trying to make it more palpable to the wider scientific community, and they're very open to it. So number one, you've got what we can offer those non-Muslims, the scientists, as well as the spiritualists who are dealing with their own problems. People have been suffering from jinn manifestation their whole life. There's people out there who have been bugged and harmed by these creatures for their whole life. Like, they bully some people. You can tell, you hear their stories, and it's classic jinn manifestation or shayateen manifestation in their life. Horrendous things that they've done to them, right? And we know, like, we can see their story and say, look, we're not going to gaslight you and say you're a liar.
Yeah.
We accept what you're saying. And you know what? Hopefully what we have can help you, right? So that's one side of things. And we've already seen a lot of success in that, brother. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
With the small group we've got called IREP, Islamic Research into Exotic Phenomena. We've already seen some success. And we've had, in some cases, upwards of 700. Vast majority of non-Muslims. I'd say 90%. Maybe even more.
And I'll be honest, bro, just as a point on that, that's unprecedented in the Dawah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to blow the, your trumpet or IRIP's trumpet or whatever the case is. I'm saying that because this is something that's missing in the Dawah. We work in echo chambers and bubbles, basically, where majority of our audiences are Muslim. And sure, you can argue that that's a type of Dawah or Islah, which is fine and is needed. But when you're talking about Dawah to non-Muslims, and that's your objective, but your majority audience is Muslim, that's problematic then, because you're not hitting the mark.
No.
So,
in fact, you're hinged upon the idea that person will carry what you've taught them to elsewhere and make the Dawah.
Yes.
So it's kind of like
with IREP, one thing we've noticed, and maybe because it's the interest in this topic, that when we do these spaces, and the popular ones we've had majority 95% plus non-Muslims attending these spaces, which is phenomenal from a Dawah perspective.
Alhamdulillah. Well, we've already seen the results of how that works, and it's mashallah, it is encouraging, because there are people out there that you think, oh, they're never, they don't want. But as soon as they hear what we have to offer them, it goes wild. People are
connects the dots.
Because there's a lot missing. Like, part of what the whistleblowers are only whistleblowing about is the technology. and the whole spiritual side and the anthropology
We didn't
side
get
of
into
it.
that. Maybe next episode we get into the spiritual
Yeah.
perspective.
That whole aspect is missing. So these guys are like, yeah, okay, we know you've got some stuff hidden in some secret hangars. It's a technology that's way more advanced than we've got. You know, whose is it? Where's it coming from? That all that side of it still hasn't really been. We've just been confirmed that it's non-human. But who? What? We come in with what we know about and we come from the absolute opposite side.
Yeah.
We know exactly who they are, where they're from, what they're doing, what their ideas are with the majority of mankind, why they seem to be whispering in the ears of the most advanced. Because like you mentioned before, mashallah, made the great link that in the past, when the Muslims were the superpower, they were in the ears of the people who were in control of the governments in the time of Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. They were carrying people around, making them look like they were like the Hollywood of the day, those men who were being carried in the sky. People would travel from all over to meet the man who could fly because Allah blessed him. In reality, whenever the name of Allah would be mentioned, these men would fall out of the sky. And it's happened on a number of occasions, right? So
people literally
they felt, Sheikh al-Islam mentioned it. There was a man, he came out of the masjid, he went on his thing and he flew up in the sky, and then one of the guys saw it, he said, and the guy fell from the sky and died, right? This is reported in our own books.
Crazy,
yeah?
man.
So these people end up being the Hollywood of their time. Right now, that's what we've got going on. These people in these secret programs are being whispered in their ears, and they're in contact with this non-human intelligence, and they're keeping it very secretive, probably because of the advice of the non-human intelligence itself. The Jinn are saying, don't reveal what we're doing, whatever the case might be. But so us engaging in that and explaining who they are that's doing this, that's created this technology, where they're from, what their purpose is, from that, people love to hear that. They want to know. The other side of it, the street, Akhi, is advising non-Muslims, because we have this strange period of time. For 100 years ago, the idea of believing God, in devils, in the unseen, black magic, magicians was common. And people didn't respect any of that stuff. They didn't like magicians. They didn't like the occult. It was evil and it was shunned in society. Yet the most powerful and wealthy were doing it in secret. And that's always been the case. During the witch trials back in the day, the people who really kept hold of that knowledge and it died out among the lay people were the rich and famous, the rich and wealthy at that time. The Queen had her own, advisor who was, who had his little mirror. I always forget his name.
Was it John something? Where's Tariq when you need him, man?
Yeah, where's Tariq when you need him, bruv? MashaAllah. But yeah, my memory's back. I'll send it all. John D. That's it. Thank you very much, brother. John D. So, it was always known amongst the aristocrats and the opulent people, the power that this knowledge kind of gave you, right? And that's where it is today. It's in the rich and the famous and the powerful of the world today. They still have this knowledge. They know what the exchange is, as is mentioned in the Quran. That knowledge, you don't learn it except that you have no share in the hereafter. And it still goes on to this day. People are learning that knowledge and they don't have no share in the hereafter, but they don't mind. It's a good exchange. Even the singers and songwriters, they do. So for Muslims today, a lot of people who are very heavy into the understanding of atheism and combating that, the weaker Muslims who are out there, when this comes out, that there is a non-human intelligence and it's visiting this planet, it's helping us and it's giving us energy and technology and all this stuff, people might become disillusioned and believe.
Especially when they say that, these guys also seeded you on this planet.
Yeah.
They tweaked the genome, and
this is that's a whole episode in itself. Right?
Yeah.
But people like Joe Rogan have mentioned this. That the idea that somehow, instead of us being evolved from monkeys, but we were genetically modified monkeys, it didn't happen by accident. No. Some intelligent being, ancient intelligent being, has came in and did this to us. And there's people talking about genetic markers, showing some sort of evidence of that. This is going to be a huge fitna. And if us Muslims are not prepared for it and have knowledge on it, and I'm not saying every Muslim has to become interested in this, right? But for the sake of the Dawah to be sharp in this understanding and seeing what's what mechanisms are working in the background in America, who are the superpower of today, who are the voice of the people today. If they were to drop this tomorrow, how many Muslims are prepared to understand? What do you mean non-human intelligence? What created thing? So technologies from them? What's it? It's going to cause a lot of questions, and people who don't and aren't aware of the true reality of the jinn and how they interact with mankind, it is a bit of a blind spot. But alhamdulillah, having platforms like this to come and talk about it. And I know we're going to get comments. People are probably going to mock and laugh or whatever, but there is definitely a need for it. So it's a two-way street. We have to educate the Muslims about the reality of the jinn and what's going on in these programs, and we have to educate the non-Muslims with regard to the jinn so that they have a better understanding of what's actually going on in these secret programs.
There's definitely a part 2. So if everyone watching, if you want a part 2, just let us know in the comment section.
Sure.
Like I said,
ban me from the channel.
No, like I said, there may be a part 2, part 3, part 4. But yeah, Farouk, Jazakallah khair for coming on, bro. It's been very enlightening. I've learned a lot, although I learn these things from you all the time anyway. But you dropped some new bombs or gems today, if you like, not bombs. Let's remove the bombs. Let's remove the bombs from it. Gems today.
We learn about this, bro.
Yeah, gems today. But yeah, Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you, man.
Jazakallah khair. And thanks for letting me come on, bro. Appreciate it.
May Allah bless you, man.
Assalamu alaikum.